I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. The first item on the agenda is to go into closed meeting. Be it therefore resolved, the Board of Supervisors hereby enters into closed meeting for the purpose of the following. I guess I need a motion first, don't I?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Chair Palettis?
Aye.
6 ayes.
The first item in closed meeting, Section 2.2-3711, discussion, consideration, or interviews of candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. And -3, discussion or consideration of acquisition of real property for public purpose or the disposition of publicly held property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or the negotiating strategy of a public body. And that's the old Blacksburg Middle School property and the Junction Street property. And I'm sorry, on the first one is transportation safety and personnel. We're getting ready to go back. Okay.
So we done, right?
Okay.
We've already,
Do I have a motion, please, to...
we already voted.
We're already done, okay.
Yeah, we're ready to
Now we're
roll.
in closed meeting. Let's go. The first item of business is to go out of work session, or go out of closed meeting. Do I have a...
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Ms. Perkins?
Ms. Perkins.
Yes. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Chair Palettis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
And the next item is certification of closed meeting. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements by law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion conveying the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Chair Palettis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
The next item on the agenda is our invocation, and we'll follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we'll please stand and take a moment of silence and consider all that's before us tonight.
Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
The next item is our public hearing. The following public hearing was advertised pursuant to law in the Burbs section of the Roanoke Times on February 10th and 17th, 2013. And the ordinance is proposed ordinance amending Chapter 10 entitled Zoning of the Code of Montgomery County. And that yours or Marty's? Or Derry's, okay.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here again this evening.
staff has been working on the possible chicken keeping ordinance amendments for several months now, and we're glad to be back with you this evening to discuss it a little further. The goal here is to decide whether or not we'll be allowing chickens on residentially zoned lots in Montgomery County. So the planning staff has been able to discuss possible ordinance amendments with Dr. Paul Siegel of Virginia Tech Animal and Poultry Sciences Department. He was gracious enough to come in and meet with us, sit down at our planning department conference table, and we had long discussion with him regarding several items that you will see in the proposed amendments. He gave us lots of good counsel, and we really appreciated his help. So we took a look at our zoning map for Montgomery County, and we figured out that approximately 522 residentially zoned parcels greater than 2 acres in size would benefit from the approval of the proposed amendments if they're so adopted. Also, we did a little math and we decided that these proposed amendments would affect about 19% of the 2,723 parcels that are currently zoned residentially. That includes R1, R2, rural residential, transitional neighborhood development, and planned unit development residential. So this is our map, and you can't see it real well, I'm sure, at this distance, but we attempted to show all these lots that are zoned residentially in the county with several different colors. You'll see the legend down in the bottom. It starts out, I know you can't read it, it starts out with the orange is 0 to 1 acre in size, the green is 1 to 2 acres, the yellow is 2 to 3, the pink is 3 to 5, and the blue is anything 5 acres or greater that's zoned residentially. You notice that the majority of the larger parcels that you can identify would be the blue ones because they're big enough to be seen, lie to the east of Blacksburg, and some between the town of Blacksburg and the town of Christiansburg, and then sporadically throughout the county in other areas. So the commission held a public hearing on January the 9th, and they recommended denial of the proposed ordinance amendment to allow the chicken keeping. The vote was 6-1. Some of their concerns were odor and noise and predators and rodents all being attracted to the area. One of the members felt like that the chickens should be allowed in residential zones, although their thought was to address it with the nuisance ordinance rather than the zoning ordinance. So at that public hearing, there were no public members present to speak at the meeting. So last month, our planning director discussed this item with the board during work session. And the board voted at that time to move forward with the advertisement of the proposed ordinance. That was recommended for denial by the Planning Commission with 2 changes. The change in minimum lot size from 1 acre to 2 acres was made, and a change in minimum side yard and rear yard setbacks was from 25 feet to 50 feet was made, as you'll see in the proposal. So now we get down to the amendments. Section 1061 is our definition section for the zoning ordinance, and residential chicken keeping would be defined as the keeping of up to 6 female chickens in non-agriculturally zoned areas as an accessory use to a single family residence, subject to the standards set out in Section 1041. Section 1041 is our supplemental districts regulation section, and we would be adding a new subsection 19 entitled urban agriculture, and set forth a few requirements here for these chickens. They would be permitted in the residential sections R1, R2, R3, planned unit development residential, and traditional neighborhood development zoning districts. And the minimum requirement would be at least a parcel of at least 2 acres in size to have chickens. The owner must reside on the property with the chickens. No roosters would be allowed. The chickens would not be allowed to roam free and shall be confined to the enclosure or structure provided for them. Chicken enclosures should be located only in the rear yard with a setback of at least 50 feet from the side yard and the rear yard lines. The enclosures should be well ventilated and conducive to the well-being of the chickens. The enclosure should not be more than 10 feet in height. The on-site commercial uses such as the selling of eggs, chickens for meat would be prohibited. This is basically provided to allow personal consumption of your own eggs if you decide to raise chickens on your property. It's more for a health benefit instead of a financial benefit, I think. So waste created should not be creating, waste should not create a nuisance to or a health hazard to the adjoining property owners. Containers should be provided for all feed and other materials so that we would not attract rodents or insects, predators of that nature. The zoning permit would be required, and the residential chicken keeping should comply with Chapter 3, which is our animal section of the code, and Chapter 7, which is our Article 3, which is our nuisance section of the code. Now, I will attempt to answer any questions you might have. If you
Any questions? No?
No questions.
Oh,
I may have a comment later, but no questions.
I have a question. Okay, so like if the person is going to have it on, if this were to pass, and they'd have to come in and apply for zoning, is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
right? And then they would be given this list of how they would need to do things on their property? Like
Yes.
how are they going to know to do all the things that are on there?
They would apply for a zoning permit, and we would give them a copy of that little section that would give the criteria there. We will have a form developed that will list the criteria right on the form. Similar to our home occupation form, does the same thing. We can handle that so that they take home a copy.
And then really you wouldn't be going to make sure everything was in compliance unless there was a complaint.
That's
That's
usually how
correct.
we work things. We don't have the staff to go out and
Right.
monitor everything, so it would be by complaint.
Okay.
Originally,
Yes, sir.
when they came in and applied for the permit and everything, would it be an initial visit to see, that they comply with everything? Not, what I'm saying is that initially, when they started with the chickens, to make sure that they complied with the 50 setbacks and all of that.
Oftentimes, the way we handle that, we have some awfully nice aerial photography with our GIS mapping and that sort of thing. And what we'll do is pull up that person's property and have them to sketch where their enclosure would be, and have them to mark on a copy of that aerial photograph what the setback distances are, so that we'll notate that it's 50 feet. And when I sign off on the zoning permit, all that information will be right there on the permit. And then that way, if we get a complaint, we'll have it in writing that they signed it and said they would comply. That's usually how we do it, Mr. Brown.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Gary?
Yes, sir.
And what happens if they don't comply?
Well, then we would issue a notice of violation. Or I might defer to Marty just a little bit. We are using some nuisance sections in here. Would we just handle it strictly the way we do normal zoning violations?
Yes,
No.
that would be zoning violation.
It'd be a zoning violation through the zoning department then, and we would not be dealing with
And what
animal
does that
control.
constitute? What happens at that point now?
Well, first thing that happens is I issue a 30-day notice, and if they do not comply within 30 days, we go out and do an inspection, and they get a 7-day letter. And after the 7 days, then we can take steps to take them to court and let the judge help them figure out why they're not complying.
Okay, so, and the only way that you would basically know if they were compliant is if a neighbor checked on them?
Usually that's how we find out, is the neighbors will call if there's a problem.
Okay, and how do you said aerial photographs, and I know we talked about, this board talked about last meeting about the feed and stuff that gets set out, and I understand you say they got to have containers. How are we going to know whether they got a container or not if we never go out there?
We haven't dealt with chickens in the past, but what I've observed with, in years past, people will call about rats and all kinds of things, is if someone is not properly taking care of feeding arrangements for dogs, pets of any kind, you'll attract rodents, and they'll start to call. They'll let us know. It seems to regulate itself mostly, especially in these tighter little neighborhoods where the lots are smaller. There's no real good way. I mean, we just don't have the staff to go out to each individual one. Now, if we have a special use permit, then we're required to go there occasionally to check it out. That's the way it works. But.
Okay, so then I assume there is some designated way that they're going to have to get rid of their waste?
We haven't specifically told them how to do it. We have said that they must not create a problem for the neighbors. The section is stated that waste shall not create a nuisance or a health hazard to adjoining property owners. So there again, they can only have 6 chickens. And I'm hoping that with the 2-acre minimum requirements, surely waste wouldn't be so much of a problem. Now, if you get a larger flock, yeah, that's going to be an issue, but with only 6, I'm hoping that they'll take care of them and they'll have enough room that it really won't be a big issue.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, if they start having problems and you have people come in and check on their neighbors and say, they're doing this, that, or the other, whether they are or not, you've got to go check on it.
Yes, sir. If they file a complaint, we always go.
So I'm wondering just how much time you might, sound like we got, 19 or 20% of people that could be chicken owners?
Well, the number of lots was 522 residential zoned lots that would qualify, being 2 acres in size or greater. So that would be the only number we'll be dealing with this section. See, a significant part of the county is zoned agricultural A1, and they're allowed to have the chickens by right there.
Even if they don't have an acre of land?
Correct.
So how are we treating, and why are we treating one group of citizens because they don't have but 1 acre of land differently than we would someone who has 2 acres of land?
Well, the difference would be in agriculturally zoned properties, we would expect farm animals to be there. And we do have some limits there. I've had to deal with one particular property in Plum Creek for better than a year now. When they have a certain size lot, they do have some intensive livestock requirements that they have to meet, and we will go out and investigate when we get those complaints. But with the agriculturally zoned property, you expect some farm animals, and people could have bought residentially zoned property that didn't anticipate maybe dealing with chickens, and that's why the acreage is larger, the number of chickens is few, but it's just to provide a personal few eggs for that family to use. It's not to support the grocery store.
And you've had problems out of chickens, you say, before?
I've only had one real farm animal problem in the 6 years I've been here. And it took us a little while to get that one under control. We had them under control, and then they kind of violated again, so we had to go back out. And that one of the individuals left the property, so that cured the problem.
Okay, and that had to do with chickens, huh?
It had to do with all sorts of farm animals. There was some poultry, there was some cows and horses and pigs and goats, and they wanted to be old McDonald's farm on an acre.
What size acreage was that?
1 acre.
1 acre.
And we attacked that one with the intensive livestock ordinance, and it was successful. So
basically, we have something already in line that we can go by to, if somebody has a problem with them, to go out and say, hey, you can't do this?
Well, that intensive livestock section is designed for the agriculturally zoned properties. For example, it's basically, it's designed to handle the larger numbers, your feeder lots, your 5,000 chicken poultry barns and that sort of thing. But I was able to use that section of the code to deal with that one individual on that small agricultural lot. But we really, we don't have any way to allow the chickens at all in the residential zones unless this amendment is approved by the board.
What is the difference between having a zoning that will let them and not have anything that will let them?
I'm not sure I
If you don't have a zoning and people still have chickens, or you don't have a zoning and people have chickens,
Well,
what's the difference is that?
Currently, if a person has a residentially zoned property and I get a complaint from a neighbor that says, hey, my neighbor over here has 24 chickens, I don't like it, I have to go and say, you got to get rid of your chickens. Okay? If it's zoned agricultural, there's nothing to be said if they have 24 chickens until they exceed that that definition set out in the ordinance for livestock, based on the parcel size.
So, and I guess I'm going to ask this just because I want to know the answer. And I think there's a lot of people who'd like to know the answer on some of this stuff. As we said here today, people can have chickens and they can run free if they're in A1.
Yes, sir.
And if their chickens are running free and someone dog goes running that he's not supposed to be doing either, I guess, and he kills a chicken, and because he kills a chicken, he is deemed to be put to sleep. Just looking for the justification of that.
Okay, in the animal section, there's a section that says, did you start to say something? I think there's a section that says that they have to keep the chickens on their own property. I'm looking for that.
Yeah, but I think what he's talking about, the dog comes onto a farmer's property and is chasing livestock. Livestock would include chickens and cattle, horses.
Well, this would be someone who has less than 2 acres of land and's got chickens.
Are you talking about residential?
Well, I don't know what the zoning is.
Well, in agricultural, if the dog goes out on the farmer's land and chases livestock, he's violating the animal, one of the animal sections. And if he harms that livestock, you're right, the judge could either order him put down or to order him out of town with dog. Also, the farmer can shoot that dog if he's putting his livestock at risk.
But then on the opposite side of that, if the chicken comes over onto the land of the person who has the dog and the dog kills him, what's it?
The dog can do that with immunity.
Okay. Now, I'm going to say this. I am not against chickens.
Okay.
I also love to hear a rooster crowing every morning.
Okay.
Got no problem with that.
Okay.
I was raised we raised a lot of chickens just to have food on the table. So I have no problem whatsoever with chickens. I just think that we might be over-regulating something that has been working really well for a long, long period of time, and I really don't see the purpose in it myself. It just seems that we've got something that we already have. Sometimes you can micromanage things to where that, you know, suddenly we're not free in the United States anymore, and that's my concern.
Well, we would not be regulating any further any chickens that are in an agricultural zoning district. We would, if this amendment is approved, we would be allowing 522 approximately property owners zoned residentially somehow to the opportunity to have 6 chickens. That's all. That's the only difference. Only 522 parcels, and they'd be allowed to have 6 chickens.
Well, you know, and that's ironic, but I know of at least 10 less than 2 acre lots down in my area that has chickens as well as roosters. And they seem to get along pretty well.
Zoned residential?
Well, I don't know what they're zoned. They got houses on lots that are less than an acre.
Okay. And just for clarity, we do have an awful lot of residences on agriculturally zoned property. You don't have to be zoned residential to have a house. So oftentimes you'll see even entire subdivisions in an agricultural zone. They weren't required to rezone just to create that subdivision. So that could be part of it. And it could be that those chickens are just not offensive to those folks in those residential zones.
As I've said before, chickens are much better than hogs.
Okay.
That's all that I'm saying.
Bill, you had a question?
Okay, I got one other question.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sitting here thinking when as Supervisor Creed was talking now, I know that the county has an ordinance, I guess, when somebody loses sheep or something and a dog warden comes out to investigate, they file some kind of report. Does fowl fall into that area? So if I had 6 prize hens and in a coop and some big old dog busted through the coop and killed all 6 of them and the dog run off and I couldn't find the owner or anything, could I come and file some claim with my 6 $300 a piece chickens? You know, I'm just using that.
I get $20 a piece for them,
I don't believe he's got Dominicers. Do you all?
No, they have to be super chickens or something.
We had
to
one of those
be
kids.
valued that much.
But they want to put ribbon, right?
Yeah, but I was thinking that did they fall under this reimbursement ordinance or whatever that we have?
I'm not
under
sure.
damage?
Steve brought a good point. Maybe difference they want I'll check. I don't think it does. Right?
Oh, okay.
I think if a big dog goes in and kills the chicken and no one sees him and gets away with it, they can't identify him, you're going to be on the hook.
If he got one, he'll get none if he get loose again.
It won't take long to get 6 of them.
It'll happen every time.
Okay. Any other questions of the board?
No question.
How about a comment?
You haven't got chicken
Did you
in.
bring me some eggs?
I didn't bring us. There was 4 or 3 other supervisors that joined me just to discuss this matter, and I just happened to have some farm fresh eggs for my chicken. And I do know how to count to 4, and I figured I'm 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4.
Whoa.
He's a jumbo too.
No, they're big. They're all and organic.
Is that bribery, Marty?
And your other colors was 5.
No, he's got super chickens.
No,
Nor me. You didn't support
I
him.
remember the last time we were voting, I counted votes, and so we
Well, I guess Gary and I just don't count.
And
We just
Jim,
let
too.
it- And Jim too.
But I'll tell you something. I get my eggs from a legal A1 chicken farm that is even allowed to sell them.
Well, I will just tell you, in order to get back in the good graces of certain individuals, we will expect the same,
depends on your vote.
well, he can vote no, but I'm
He doesn't count after 4 though. So if it's on that side, you can. He only wants
that's
one.
just too bad.
Well, Marty, do we have to put this down on our list when we put down our...
You have to declare it.
Now, if we can get those folks to pay you 10 cents for those eggs, you're in deep doo-doo.
Now, see, my chickens are in egg, so I'm
He's
in
legal.
compliance. I'm legal.
He's an A1. Mhm.
I can even have a rooster if I want to.
Oh.
Not that I want.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mr.
I want to keep mine cold.
Chris.
Well, here you go. You put them right back.
Mr. Tuck. All right, I think we're done,
That was on my
Ms.
grocery
Jenkins.
list.
And
We're gonna see how.
we have nobody signed up for this public hearing, but if there's anybody in the audience who would like to come up and speak, please step forward, state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
That was good.
Good evening.
Good
Joel
evening.
Donahue, 2722 Bunny Trail Drive, which is actually a driveway in the Ellet Valley. And I will recognize that I'm one of the planning commissioners here. I come as a public citizen tonight, and I want to make a few comments. There's 2 points I want to make. One is a fairness and economic justice issue, and one is the fact that we have outdated and arbitrary zoning. I live on a 1.9 acre lot. Puts me in a problem. Go from 1 to 2, I'm out of the picture. I have a 5.5 acre lot next to me and a 5 acre lot across the street from me. I have 30 acres directly behind me where cattle have been raised for years. I can't have chickens under this ordinance. I can't have chickens because I'm in a residential area. Yet I've got cattle around me. I live 1,000 feet from Luster's Gate Road. West of Luster's Gate Road, where I live, it's residential. East of Luster's Gate Road, toward Paris Mountain, it's A1. I listen to mule spray, largely had in the valley to prevent against, to warn against coyotes, and I listen to roosters crow. But I can't have chickens. I don't want to have chickens necessarily, but it's a fairness issue. I also think when you go and make acreage go up 2, 5, 10, 30 acres, you're taking out the very people who could probably use the chickens, people who want a little help economically raising chickens for eggs and meat, and they're going to be the people with the smaller lots that you're excluding. You're basically letting chickens go only to those people who can afford huge lots in residential areas. Okay? We have in the Ellet Valley is the predominance of those big blue lots. East of Blacksburg, that's the Ellet Valley. That's the 80% of the lots in the county that are involved in this are in the Ellet Valley. Now, in the Ellet Valley, you have the subdivisions of Woodland Hills, Deercroft, and the Blacksburg Country Club, and they all have homeowners associations. Those associations can put rules on their owners to limit chickens, other livestock, or anything else they want to. If that's a problem, they should be able to deal with it. I'm one who said nuisance ordinances can be used to do this. The problem I have is that our zoning is arbitrary. If I live in a valley, and instead of having the zoning look at the valley as a whole, where you see from the plateau that Blacksburg's on down where I live in the valley, on the western part of Luster's Gate Road overlooking the old cheese factory, and then up the hill to Paris Mountain, which is my view, and right down the middle of that valley, which is part of a view shed and a sound shed, we put a zoning that says west of Luster's Gate Road is R2, and where we expect eventually to have water and sewer in a karst geological area from 1962 or 5. It's nuts. And then across the street we have A1. People can have mowing hay, they got roosters, they got mules. We really need to look at our comprehensive zoning. Part of the problem with this issue is because of this arbitrary and zoning that was done 50 years ago before some of these issues that we now have were important. We need to relook at that. And then the other problem we have is the economic issue, where if we just keep pushing lots up to say, well, we'll push the can down the road because we'll just exclude people with lower sized lots, we're basically creating an economic justice issue as far as I'm concerned. And those are the points I want to make. I've made those points. Attorney Tuck has heard them as the liaison to the Planning Commission. Those Mr. Sandy and Ms. Jenkins, but I want to make sure that these specific topics were brought to your attention so you can consider them in your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the board on this subject? I just have one comment I want to make, and it kind of goes along with Mr. Donahue. I said in the beginning when we started working on this, that when you have a large lot like that, maybe we ought to look at down zoning. And, that would be a way to take care of the problem. But that's a different area over there where he's at than where I'm at, and we're in an area like Gary's where we have less than 1 acre A1 lots, right in beautiful downtown Roanoke, and we had a problem, I think, over on Silver several years ago. People had a couple of acres, and I can't remember how it was zoned. Steve may remember, but they wanted to have horses, and I don't know if it was R1 or R2, and they had enough acreage to have a horse, and we allowed them to down zone to do that. Remember that, Steve? 5 acres, yeah. But they were in a residential area at that point, and they down zoned and took care of their problem. So that's my say on it. If there's nothing else on this, we will close this public hearing. The next item on the agenda is public address, and we have 2 people signed up, and I'll call your names and you'll come forward. You have 5 minutes, please. And the first name is Paul Smeal. And your name and address, please.
Okay, Chairman Gladys, ladies and gentlemen, Paul Smeal, 1107 Kentwood Drive, Blacksburg, Virginia. A resident of Blacksburg since 1960, and I just recently went off the commission in December for the Parks and Rec, but I participated in the Montgomery County Parks and Rec programs for, I think, the last 12 years, up to maybe 20 or 30 programs per year, and I didn't realize I was that busy. But what I want to speak to is everything good about the Parks and Recreation Department, plus I have some comments for you as supervisors. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a tour of the government center and the courthouse, and this is 20 seniors arranged by our senior supervisor. And the very first item was the TV, or the video that you put together, and Chairman Jim welcomed the group and telling what all's been done in the county. And I was real pleased to see that one of the first things we saw was a rafting trip with some seniors, and we talked about parks and recreation. So I thought this gives a good lead-in for me tonight to talk about parks and rec. And the 3 areas I want to cover is the seniors, the athletic program, and the frog pond, if I can get all that in another 4 minutes. As to the senior programs, a number of the people that participate in those are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. I don't know if we have a 90. And I know you'd like to see a number of these people come out at night, but many of them, like myself, can no longer drive, or they don't want to come out at night. So I'm here representing probably 200 or 300 seniors that participate in the programs. And to give you some idea about the senior programs and what I'm going to speak about is that in the winter brochure, there's 31 senior trips, activities, and programs. Of those 31, 21 are completely full, and of those 21, 13 have a waiting list for people to participate. And this is an example of how all the programs within the Parks and Rec are growing, and the staff is doing more and more, and not that you're giving them less, but because of the additional cost and so forth. And I guess what I would conclude about the senior programs, and as I indicated, I've been participating close to 14 years with them, I'd say 20 to 30 of them per year. So I think I speak with somewhat of a knowledge, or not authority, but a knowledge of the situations. As to the athletic programs, it was reported to us that for the winter basketball schedule, 37 teams. Now on the surface, you look at that and say, well, 37, you think of that figure. I inquired about the Blacksburg, they have 32 teams, and even Christiansburg has less. But when we think about our county, 37 basketball teams, we have 10 youth per team. So we expand into, 370 people benefiting from our programs. When you add 2 coaches per team, you're adding another 74 people to our athletic programs. And then when it comes game time, you're adding a couple officials, a timer, a couple scorekeepers, so you're adding more people. And as I look at these figures, and I recognize that on some of these teams there are a lot of brothers and so forth, that our athletic program, such as the basketball program, is probably reaching 300 to 400 people, because the night of the games, who do we have at the games? And we've all gone through this. We got the parents and the grandparents and the brothers and sisters. I think we've all experienced going to baseball, softball, and all this is done with one individual and a couple interns to help with all the situation. And before they're done with basketball, they're already out working on the athletic fields, getting them prepared for the spring and summer softball and baseball games. And so I want you to be aware that if there's a need for our outdoor programs, it would be for additional person. I want to back up to about the senior programs and trips. If there was a need for the senior programs, as I look upon it, and I don't think I'm in too much opposition with the staff, would be a bus that would fit 20 to 25 people. Because right now, we're taking 10 people per van, even though it would seat 15, they take 10. But if you have an additional 5 people wanting to go on this activity, there's not enough for another van, and you're turning away people. And personally, in my situation, when these brochures come out, I take them to all the rec programs I go to, which happens to be about 6 in a week's time, because I do aerobics and the whole bit. And I tell these people to participate in the programs, and about 2 or 3 weeks later they come by and say, I went over and signed up, but I couldn't go. And this is disappointing to me. The other thing, the frog pond is very popular. And
Your time's up.
I got 2 minutes, one second.
Okay.
For the frog pond, I think an expansion to a splash pool. In other words, I'm thinking of a paved area with the sprinklers and so forth, that preschool kids can come and play. It wouldn't take additional lifeguards, and if you were to make that investment, it would pay for itself in a period of time. Again, thank you for your support for Parks and Rec. You should be very proud.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Smill.
And the next person signed up is Melissa Jeffords.
Hi. I spoke before the Planning Commission at their last hearing.
Can you
My
speak
name
into
is
the mic?
Melissa Jeffords. I'm from 1176 Flick Drive in Shawsville. We have a major road issue on the end that is not state maintained. We are fine. We are just barely at that line. Our neighbors, however, are not. We have elderly people, we have handicapped people, people with major illnesses that cannot get out of their homes since the flood. You're looking at a loss of drive this high down that road. Ms. Gale, her husband has Alzheimer's. Should she require emergency assistance, they can't get in her yard without driving through her neighbor's yard. We can't get help, they're on fixed income. We have a lot of children, we have 7. So we're basically fixed. And we can't get the road fixed because we're not state maintained. We've got everybody to sign a petition, but one gentleman, he's at the end. He said the only reason he ain't signing it, he's already paved his end. He didn't want to sign it because he's already paved his end. He didn't care about his neighbors. I do. We can get in and out. Our neighbors can. These are elderly people. These are people with health issues that cannot get emergency service. Police came the other night because there was a prowler in our neighborhood and they couldn't enter in that end. For all they knew, the prowler could have got to the elderly people and killed them before the police could get there. And we need help. We don't know what to do. So if anybody's got any ideas, my number's on there. I'm basically usually home until after school. Once school lets out in Montgomery County, I'll give you my cell phone number. You'll have to catch me as I go. Because like I said, I have kids. But I appreciate your time. We would like any help we can to get it declared to where the state can take it over. Because there's no way we can afford to fix it. We've got river rocks this huge. We can't do it. So any help, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we're going to have to leave. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak at this public address?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jack Salkowitz. I live down on High Rock Hill Road in Pilot. I know that you're going to be discussing the budget update later on, and that comes prior to Mr. Meadows' report. So I'm hoping that during your budget discussion that he and his staff have done some kind of research and can expand on what the transportation bill that was just passed will affect the revenues we anticipate from the state. And also the second part of that was when the payroll tax got increased, all of the residents of this county actually took a 2% loss in their salaries because that money is now going to the federal government and they'll have less to spend. And this board and the county, as the employers, if you will, of the staff, have had your increases increased the expenditures you have to pay to the Social Security Administration. I'm sure those numbers should be factored in as well, and I'm hoping you can give us a little more enlightenment so that we can properly absorb all the information you're going to give us and put it on in your numerical calculations. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Seeing no one, we'll close this public address. And we have no addendums.
No, sir.
Next item is consent agenda. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Chair Palettis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
The next item on the agenda is new business. And the first item is a resolution withdrawing from the New River Valley Benefits Consortium. Do I have a motion, please?
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Palettis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution of recognition for Ben Norris. Do I have a motion, please?
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Ben Morris is our Special Olympics gold medal winner, for those of you who don't know. And roll call, please.
Mr. Palettis. I'm sorry, first. Will we make arrangements so that the resolution can be presented to Mr. Norris? Okay, thank you.
Be glad to.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Chair Palettis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
And the next item is a resolution of appreciation for Paul Smeal at Parks and Rec Commission.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Well deserved.
It's the only comment I'll make is that, I don't know how many years ago I met Paul, but Paul has been very involved in the Parks and Recreation programs, and I know that even when I was employed at the town of Blacksburg, Paul was on the Parks and Recreation Commission, and he'd always come before council and basically with the same spiel, telling council not to forget Parks and Recreation. The same thing, each year he comes before our board, and one thing about Parks and Recreation, when I guess a local government, it sort of equates to the bottom of when the money comes out, it seems like it's at the bottom of the pile. And Paul always reminds us as a board to not to forget Parks and Recreation. So, Paul, you've done a fantastic job. And when they made the mold for you, they only made one because I haven't seen anybody else. And Paul is very active to be his age. He whitewater raft. I mean, he's everywhere. Yeah. But thanks, Paul.
Anybody else? Roll call, please. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Chair Palovas?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay. And the next item is to go into work session. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins? I'm sorry. Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck? Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Chair Palovas?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, before the Smills leave, I just wanted to let them know we'll get a nice resolution for you. Now that the board's adopted that, we'll have something nice for you to have as well. We certainly appreciate all your years of service, Mr. Smill.
Miss Edmonds.
Okay. This is a very short update on sort of where we are in the budget. We usually come back to the board during this point in time and sort of talk about the requests that have been made and give you some idea of what we're looking at before we come back with the proposal. The budget handout is also in your Dropbox. It is included in your Dropbox under FY14 budget update, if you're interested in looking at it on there instead of the paper copy. State budget impact, and I don't have any details about the transportation plan that was passed. What I was tend to go over is just sort of revisit some of the information that we've given you previously about the state budget. We don't see that changing too much from the conference committee report that was issued this past weekend as far as it affects the specific agencies, primarily the schools in Montgomery County. We do still continue to see that the flexible cut is elimination of the flexible cut has occurred. It did not change from the Senate or the House side and did not change in conference committee, so we're expecting additional revenue of that of a little over $240,000. All other state revenue, we're still projecting at $116,000 and change. The increase in the governor's budget for schools, if you remember, was $615,000. Of that, $490,000 was the share for the 2% increase, and if you didn't give the 2% increase, you did not receive those funds. That money still stands, and there were two budget amendments, one on the Senate side and one on the House side. The Senate side increased the state funds by about $140,000. The House side would have increased that amount by less than $30,000. In the conference committee report, the schools still have not received the detail behind it, and a lot of theirs comes with, knowing how much you have comes with the specific details. They're estimating it would be less than $100,000 coming as an additional amendment from the General Assembly. So you're largely looking at around $700,000 increase in state funds total.
Is that one of the things that we're talking about, and I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to be sure, is that one of the amendments, if I'm remembering correctly, was expanding the 2% to cover a small portion of support staff for the raise. Is that what the extra money? Okay.
That's what this money is intended to address.
Okay, thank you.
Now, there is some language on the conference report about putting some additional money in for school resource officers or security. I don't have any details about whether or not that's going to be through grants that the school divisions will have to apply for, or if it's going to come as an allocation. Once the schools get more detail, we can certainly share that. But at this point, that's all the information we have. not a lot of additional state money coming down. Just a reminder, the 2% increase to include all school positions would cost $1.6 million. The other thing that the schools need to do or want to complete this upcoming year is the transition of the 5% VRS shift from the employer to the employee. As you may recall, when the county did this all 5% all at one time, there is some additional cost in VRS and taxes, and that generates a need for some additional dollars. On the school side, in the current year, because the information came out so late, they only did 1% transfer in the current year. They need to pick up the other 4%, and to do that, those additional costs are about $500,000. So where are we in the process right now? Trying to come to some closure before next Monday, when the proposed budget will be presented to you. And part of what we've been looking at has to do with the amount that's been requested. And county requests, we've had about $2.6 million, and that includes all of the outside agencies, and outside agencies being those that are not departments of the county, but are funded or request funds from you as the Board of Supervisors, and we have some charts to look at more detail on that in the next couple of slides. The school request is $3.6 million, so you're looking at a total request of 3.6, 2.6, 6.2 million. Outside agencies, and these are increases over and above what you're currently funding. From the existing agencies, and then those, meaning those agencies that you currently provide funds to, is about 89,000. The health department is about a little over 12,000, and that has to do with a base adjustment. In the current year, they received additional funds from the state, and when they do, we're on the formula for the cooperative health budget, and our matching share is about 38%. So this is the required adjustment in order to meet that. New agencies. Over the past number of years, we have not funded or recommended be funded any new agencies that we didn't currently fund due to the economic situation. As the state dollars dry up and as the federal dollars dry up, we continue to get requests from agencies that we have not funded before for additional funds. That total is about 107, 108,000, and we'll look at the detail on these charts. These are the agencies that you fund. Those in red indicate a mandate. You're required to fund them. The others are not mandated, but you have provided funds, and we'll get to the list of those you've not funded before but who have requested funds.
Carol, as far as the Montgomery Museum, and I'm trying to recall last year, it was $5,000 set aside. Was that for a new roof? Or was that in addition to the $5,000 that they've got in the past?
It was in addition to, for a specific capital purpose, and it was funded from one-time money only.
Okay, so in prior years when I wasn't here, we had been giving them $5,000 and we just gave them additional funds to cover the roof replacement. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that in my mind. Thank you.
Okay, for the first year in a long time, the 3-year rolling average of placements at the detention home has worked in our favor, and so our actual contribution has gone down based on that formula. The other mandate you see on this list is the Community Services Board, but they did not request any additional funds. I'm not going to go through each of these other than to point out the Goodwill Industries. The board some time ago, a number of years ago, provided specific funds for 2 clients who were Montgomery County residents in the sheltered workshop. One of those clients has retired, and so therefore their reduction represents the loss of that one client and the funding continuing for the other client. Fire prevention and medical examiners are the mandates. I guess we could say that the 911 authority is a mandate. We've never listed it one way or another before, but as you know, all the jurisdictions that came together under the authority and have been working toward that consolidation in a time frame to match when the public safety building will be completed. In the upcoming year, the authority, which is consisted of the director and no other staff, is going to be adding some management staff to start putting the consolidation plans together. I think they're looking at a training coordinator, an operations person, technology person, to begin to look at how to get the operations together when the facility is ready in the public safety building. That increase is going to be fairly significant, and about an additional $76,000. The community college, $579 increase, and that's operated off of a formula that has been in existence since I think 1970, maybe 71. It's the same formula that looks at population, students, and value, and they use the funds that they generate from the localities to save up to be a match for their capital projects on campus. The Virginia's first because of our legal documents requires our participation. The same thing with the MPO that we count as a mandate, although again the MPO, I don't know how we're fortunate this year on having several of the outside agencies, and particularly the mandates, not costing as much as previous, but that request for funding has gone down about $3,100. The New River Commerce Park, we are committed to the $55,851 in Commerce Park based on debt that's been issued. However, and the reason you see the FY14 request in black and not in red is that we're not committed to increasing those funds. They have made a request to increase those in order to incur some additional debt service, but that is not mandated as the $55,851 is.
Excuse me, Carol.
And
Sorry, Carol. Any reason why the New River Economic Development Alliance has a relatively substantial bump there in their request?
Yes, because they want, I believe it's based on population, and they've used the population of Montgomery County for some time of 83,629. That's not an updated population number, that's an old number. Several years ago, we went back and said, well, you're receiving funds from Blacksburg and Christiansburg, that counts toward the population, and we reduced their funding from 83,629 to 72,369 based on the funding they received from the two towns. They're requesting that back in addition to the funding they received from the towns. And finally, at the end, you'll see a host of other agencies that we've not funded before. And again, because we've not funded them, has nothing to do with any comment toward the work they do. It's solely because of the fiscal circumstances we've not taken on any additional agencies. But as you can see here, there are a number of them listed. One of the larger requests is the Mount View Humane, and when we funded them in this past year, it was through some of the one-time only money specifically for a project related to spaying and neutering cats. They have come back with a request for $66,000 to do both cats and dogs.
One-time money, was it around $30,000?
30 or 35. I don't have it right off the top of my head.
And one of the things I did was kind of go out and ask some of the veterinarians I know. Initially, they were skeptical, I think, what the intentions were. And I also was a little bit leery about funding a private group that would be competing potentially with those veterinarians. The vets I've talked to said they're not competing with us. Those are real strays that they're bringing in, and it's a real service that they provided last year for the cats. So just thought I'd share that with y'all.
Thank you. Okay, some of the other requests, not all of them, but just sort of a listing so you get a feel for what's coming toward you. The registrars put in a request for almost $140,000. The sheriff's office, and which includes the Western Virginia Regional Jail, is a little over $500,000. General Services is about $154,000. Fire and Rescue departments have requested around $112,000. The library is about $14,500. General contingencies, we have a policy that says you will put in general contingencies 1% of the general fund operating. In order to make that 1%, there's an additional $52,000 that we would add to general contingencies to meet that policy. Revenue refunds is a category or an account that's used to pay for two things. Obviously, refunds and interest payments on taxes, as well as the 27.5% that we pay to Radford in the revenue sharing agreement for the 177 corridor. Over the past several years, we've had to add additional money to that account in order to be able to cover some large refunds and interest payments. And so therefore, we're looking at adding about $10,000, $11,000 to the base to be able to make those payments without having to come back and request supplemental funds during the course of the year. Some of the issues, I think you've heard about health insurance before, and so it shouldn't be such a surprise that there are increases proposed. The projected Anthem number is about $625,000. I will tell you that's worst case. I hope the absolute worst case. I wasn't at your last work session about health insurance, but as I understand, you got some information on the background about that. We did at this current year issue requests for proposals for the county to be either fully insured or self-insured. On our own, outside of the consortium. We also have a consultant who is employed who is doing the analytical work in terms of looking at all those proposals and the options and is doing an analysis as we speak. And as I understand, there's some coordination going on to get a work session set up so we can bring the consultant in and have him share with you all the ins and outs of the work that he's done and make some recommendations for going forward. And I don't know what that date is, but
I'll have more under my report on that.
Okay, to be announced. And there's also the issue of school and county employee compensation. What have we been doing and what are we finishing up now? Well, it's the analysis work on all of these things. One of the things we look at in terms of what to do with the budget is what we call challenging the base, to identify any savings in the current funding that you can absorb some costs with. You're going back to what your current funds are and trying to see where you can have departments continue to make it within the existing funds they have. The other thing that's been going on since the last time we talked about the budget is updating revenue estimates. I think Mark has a formula and a trend analysis on every single revenue category there with the intent of going back before we put this proposal together and trying to see if there's any additional dollars in there that we can add to what we presented to you before, around $2 million in increased growth. The other thing that goes on is looking at all the requests. I mean, they're not all going to be funded or not fully funded. And so it's putting that package together that we've been working on and will come to some closure this week, or at least by next Monday. And so the next steps are presentation of the FY14 budget proposed on March the 4th before the your Public Service Authority meeting. We're also scheduled to establish the advertised tax rates and budget on March the 11th. That'll be the following Monday. You have community meetings scheduled for March 12th and 18th. The public hearing on the tax rate and the budget's March 26th, and our schedule is to adopt the tax rate and budget on April 15th. So that's just a short refresher and update as to where we are, and we'll be back with the details on next Monday.
Okay, any questions or comments at this time?
Just thank you for the update.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I'll reiterate this again in my budget presentation, but I want to say thanks again to Carol and Angie and Mark, because we've gone round and round and round with quite a few numbers trying to come up with a budget that's going to be something that I hope the board will find favorable, and we'll have that for you next Monday night. But as it has been every year for the last several, it's going to be a challenge.
All right, the next item is the Shawsville Rescue Squad water leak.
Mr. Chairman, I do have an announcement in regard to Shawsville. Many of you know I practice law, and I had previously volunteered pro bono to be the registered agent. I've since withdrawn doing that. I believe Mr. Anthony Needham is going to, it still may list me on the SEC website as being the registered agent, but I am not, nor am I acting on it, nor did I ever receive any money or ask for any money from the rescue squad. So I am going to participate in it, but I want to fully disclose that to my fellow board members and to the public.
All right, who's going to carry the ball on this one? Mr. Meadows?
I know very little about this. I'll probably ask John Akers if he doesn't mind stepping forward. This is my understanding is the Shawsville Rescue Squad had a infrastructure issue with a water line and incurred a considerable amount of expense in order to get that line repaired. And John, I believe you had sent an email to the board members asking if there was any consideration that they may be willing to offer as a result of this, and I'll let you.
Well, thank you, first of all, for listening to me tonight. Back on January 15th, we were contacted by Neil Turner, Emergency Services Coordinator. The PSA had contacted him and made the statement that they'd noticed that we had used a large amount of water, and they felt that we had a water leak. At that point, we called some plumbers in. They started doing some assessments, did find out there was a leak, not in either of the buildings, but it was underground. So then we had to work with the PSA to make sure it was not on their side of the meter, that it was on our side of the meter. After some testing and some digging some dirt and pulling up ground to see where the water was coming from, it was determined it was under the asphalt. After we talked to several contractors, they said the cheapest route was to replace the line, not to try to repair it, because they had no clue where it was at. So we had hired a contractor to come in, and what they basically had to do was run us new water lines from the meter through the asphalt. They had to dig the asphalt up, then dig into the ground, run in our building that houses our crash truck, the tanker from Elliston, and also our rescue sled, and then run another main line into the main part of the station that houses everything else and where our members' quarters are at. That came to a little over $9,100, the total cost. And that was a complete turnkey job. That was them hooking to the meter, testing everything. I spoke to Neil today. I know there was some concern that there was still a water leak, but we've double checked everything, and it's not leaking anywhere in the station. So we were positive we fixed the problem. But unfortunately, it did hit us in the pocket pretty hard. That was almost about 14% of my overall budget for the year was replacing that. We had some other expenditures this year with vehicles. I did have an emergency fund that we put to the side for the building. I had to dip into that a little bit to pay for some of the trucks this year because of some expenses we had with that. So this $9,100 has hurt us pretty bad. It really has. I know you guys you've heard about there's been some changes in emergency services. We're going to have to start buying some of the drugs now ourselves. The council and the hospitals aren't going to do exchanges. So just as everything else y'all deal with, money's tight and you're having to pay for a lot of stuff. And I was just coming to the council to see if we can possibly ask you for some relief on this to help us out.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was just wondering, do you have any sense of what caused the leak, or do they have any idea what caused the leak? I mean, is this going to be a recurring problem?
The company that did the work looked at the line, the existing line, and they seemed to feel that with the age of the line, that it wasn't buried deep enough. I don't think that they had never anticipated a heavier truck being put on the ground as like we've got a tanker up there now from Elliston, and we have found some cracks in the asphalt which we're going to repair, but they seem to feel that possibly that line leading in the main part of the station with the heavier truck going across it compressed the dirt down and possibly caused it. That's where they believe the leak came from.
Anyway.
Yeah, I just asked two. One's a very obvious question. Did you move that line somewhere other than where it was at, where that wouldn't happen again?
What they did is the contractor came in and he moved the line, and he said the problem probably was that line, he has seen in the past that lines that are installed at an angle when something drives across it puts more weight on it. They went down deeper with the line this time, and they did more of a straight line to where the trucks would go straight over it, but then once it crossed to the other buildings, there'd be no trucks driving over them at all.
Okay, and the other obvious question, I guess, is was there any insurance that might cover anything like that?
I had contacted BB&T Insurance. That would just be if it damaged inside the building. It wouldn't do anything on the outside of the building.
Okay. So.
Ms. Biggs?
Well, is this why we put aside funds and reserve funds for if emergencies happen?
Well, we have a contingency.
I mean, isn't that why we have money?
We do have a contingency fund if the board wants to appropriate some of that for that purpose.
And I always try to remember that Roanoke County, just in fire and personnel, costs $10,619,000 per year that they pay their 153 employees who would respond to their fire and rescue. And we have citizens who are giving up their time. And to me, it seems like Mary said, this is why we've got that emergency fund to take care of issues like this.
All right.
Mr. Brown?
Did you, when they looked at your water bill and was contacted, was an adjustment made on your water bill?
We're still working on that. They were waiting for us to get the bill, to get the problem fixed first, and Mr. Frank's supposed to be working on that as we speak.
Okay.
So, did I understand Mr. Meadows to say that this would come out of contingency funds of the county?
If the board...
And not out of the reserve funds?
What do we use those reserve funds for?
Why would that happen?
Like, we have $500,000 here and there in reserve.
Well, the primary thing that we've done with the capital reserve, Freudian slip. The primary thing we've done with reserve funds is to keep that set aside for capital projects, major building repairs, things of that sort. We also have a contingency fund, and Carol was referencing that a little earlier as we were talking about the budget. We have a contingency fund that's set aside annually in the budget that can be used for items that come up during the year that weren't anticipated in the budget. And this is, if the board would desire, this is certainly something we could appropriate from that contingency fund.
I might just say one thing. I don't know that the rescue or fire department would care where we got the money from. So we can hash that out.
Well, like if you ran out of contingency funds, then do you go in your reserve fund? I'm just trying to figure out what the protocol is, how to get money for an emergency. Like, what if we didn't have any contingency money and they came? Then do you go to your capital reserve?
Then we would talk about looking at the reserve funds that are set aside. That we have reserve funds that are set aside, and then you have what's known as fund balance. We can go into fund balance if we need to for a major, if we have a disaster and we need a couple of $100,000 that we don't have in the contingency fund. But again, we said, I know we haven't since I've been here, we've not run out of contingency money in any budget to my knowledge.
So how much do we have right now?
Let's go ahead.
I don't know how much we have in balance right now. We have over the years used all of our contingencies up. It's a contingency. It just depends on what happens during the year. Many times I think we'll get issues that come up that are capital in nature, And they're one time only. You're not doing them over and over. And so we'll go to the capital reserve funds for that. We set up a facilities and maintenance reserve to deal with some of those issues as they come up in the event there were no contingencies, or that you need to use your contingencies for ongoing operating costs. Something comes up during the year that's going to reoccur, you take that out of general contingencies because you have that money's already in your base. So in terms of what you have available, you have available monies in general contingencies. Then if you have large capital items that come up, you have other larger facilities and maintenance issues that are one-time only in nature, you have those behind that you can use as well.
So do we have enough in the contingency to pay for this bill?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But we don't know what the total amount is that we have.
I don't know what the balance is right now, but I think you were, what amount did you say? Less than $10,000? We definitely have that.
And I would like the board to also know, we did not just run out and hire a contractor. I was very proud of my membership. They got a group together, a committee together, and started digging in the ground themselves, trying to locate the leak to see. They went from the meter to the asphalt, then went to the other side of the building and went back into the dirt again. Of course, we couldn't get into the asphalt. We didn't have the equipment. But they did spend almost 2.5 days down there digging, trying to find the leak themselves. And once we would access the pipes, we could not find the leak. So that's why they pretty well told us it was up underneath the asphalt.
All right, the next item.
Can I just point out one thing in answer to Ms. Biggs' question? Because I looked back at the budget that we appropriated. General contingencies for last year was $370,000 roughly. So I don't know. Again, I don't know what the fund balance is right now, but
Right, that's what I was. Well, we could probably have the fund balance at our next meeting. Right? We could probably have, like, how much we have left after we pay this at our next meeting. That would be easy to get.
Yes.
So-
What's left in contingency?
Yeah, I just don't know the value.
Right. We could get it next time.
But I don't think it has been significant so far.
No, I think the last one we did, we were still well over 100,000. So,
Okay, may I ask a question? This has nothing to do with Shawsville, but it has to do with the contingencies. I don't know whether I was really, pardon my ignorance, really. We have a general contingency fund. We have a capital contingency fund.
no ma'am, no ma'am. Each year when the board adopts a budget, we set aside a certain amount of funds as a part of the operating budget
Right.
that we just call contingency. And I believe Supervisor Gabriel said that amount's about $370,000 for this year. As things that are not routine in nature, but not what staff considers significant capital, like $200,000 or $300,000 roofs. If just like what came here tonight, if we have a need for $9,000 or $12,000 or $14,000 for various operational needs of the county that weren't specifically budgeted anywhere else, then those can be brought to the board. The board has to appropriate the money out of that general contingency. It's not money that I can just spend without asking first.
Right, I understand that part.
So that's in the general operating budget. Now, over the years, as at the end of each fiscal year, when the county has had additional funds left over at the end of the year, when we've had excess revenues over expenditures,
Like we did this year.
the board has decided to allocate some of those monies into various reserve accounts. And that's, if you remember the sheet that I think Carol calls the Where's the Cash sheet,
Right.
that shows the various reserves that the county has set up. We've got a number of reserve accounts that are set up as well to address future capital needs, future one's auto graveyard, one's landfill. We've got reserves set aside so that if expenditures need to arise to address any of those issues, you've got reserve monies that you can fall back on to look at. So that's separate than the contingency. The contingency money is annual operating funds, if you will. The reserve accounts are monies that have been set aside in one or more years to be used for primarily future capital needs. So that's the primary difference. Does that help?
I've got it, but
It said fund set aside
I like-
just in case stuff happens.
That's what
You don't
you
All right,
anticipate.
now, we don't spend it, okay? We don't spend any of that. What happens to it?
At the end of the year, when we talk about the excess revenues over expenditures at the end of the year, if you haven't spent your contingency money, that money is included in those excess revenues that then, if you want to set some of that aside into a reserve account, you can do that. So it just it winds up in your fund balance at the end of the year unless you decide to reserve it for another specific purpose.
So in other words, we have savings account for everything.
I wish we did. No, we don't have a savings account for everything. We have from reserve funds that have been set aside for various capital
understand
needs
that.
over the years.
I understand
But
that.
none of those, we could wipe out most of those capital reserves with 1 or 2 projects.
Or it can go forward and be the reserve for the following year.
Yes, sir, it can.
Where I think most of the time it ends up if we have
Right.
anything left
Yeah,
over.
I know that.
And one of the things that we'll talk about, and Ms. Biggs and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is it won't be included in my budget presentation Monday night, but as the board reviews the budget for the upcoming fiscal year, I know one of the things that this group has asked for an update on is the reserve funds that were set aside, that we set some monies aside last fall when we talked about the one-time money that we had left over from the real estate tax increase. But we also had a good year financially last year in terms of the revenues over expenditures. You've allocated some of those into some reserve accounts as well. The rest of that simply goes to fund balance, which is what the rating agencies look at to see how financially stable you are, to make sure that you're increasing your stability, which is what helps us with our bond rating.
Yeah. Seems I've heard all that before. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. The next item is the $400,000 for the school board.
Mr. Chairman, I know that this is an item that the schools had sent over to us, I guess on January 10th, requesting that the board consider the allocation of the $400,000 that was set aside for their use. There were some questions at the January 28th board meeting regarding their request. They went back and met with their board and subsequently sent this letter that's under attachment F, dated February 12th, requesting the allocation of the $400,000 for school needs to address known issues at their school facilities. And so we put this back on work session tonight for board's discussion and if you desire action on that item.
Okay. Anybody have any? Mr. Gabriel?
The revised letter answers my concerns, and so I'm happy to make a motion coming out of work session to allocate the monies.
Okay.
And
Mr.
in looking at that, there was some additional, the letter refers to some additional attachments that were going to be included. I'd like to look at those and have the opportunity to digest them before I would want to move forward.
I believe those attachments I sent out under separate emails back when they forwarded them to me. I do have one document that may provide some help. This is just for the Christiansburg strand that the school board provided, identifying needs just in the Christiansburg strand.
This is the Christiansburg strand.
Yes.
Is this the sheet that they intend to work from?
I can't answer that question. All I know is that is the this sheet that I passed out, I believe, is a sheet that they provided back when we had the joint meeting. I guess that was the end of September, that identified needs at CHS. I know they've got a listing for all the other schools as well, but I found this attachment today and wanted to print it out just for CHS.
So this really doesn't tell us anything because we don't know where they are planning on using it.
Yeah,
I don't.
It says right here.
No, it doesn't. It says,
Oh, it doesn't say
actually
specifically.
references the list that we were specifically given during the joint work session in November 2012. So they did provide us with a list. And I still think it's outside of our purview. I mean, we can allocate based on category, but I don't think we should be micromanaging exactly which project they need to be spending it on. I don't think we can legally do that either.
I'd like to know what we're spending the money on, have an idea, and since we are allocating it out of a one-time fund, and I'd like the opportunity to be able to digest it and look at it. And looking at that back in November, and I did get it put in my Dropbox, but I haven't been able to pull up that study and this. Now, if this is what they were going through and prioritizing, I wouldn't have I'd understand it. And if this is the document that they were working from, and they wanted to pick anywhere they wanted to go on any of these projects and prioritize whichever ones from this list, if this is what they're talking about, I just want to make sure we're all speaking the same language and talking about the same thing. And if this is the list that they provided you, then I'm tickled to death. And however they want to prioritize it and whatever projects that they want to use it for, that is their business as far as what we've allocated and set aside that money for.
I think that we have the right to know what they're going to spend it for. And not only do we have the right to know, but the general public has a right to know what money is being spent for. No matter where we spend it or what we spend it
That's
for.
absolutely right. They can attend a school board meeting and they will see exactly what it's being spent on, because they are delegated, they are elected by the citizens to determine how these things are spent within certain categories. If we allocate $400,000 towards maintenance and we don't like how they spend it, we can run for school board if we want, and then we can have a say over it. But right now, we can't. Now, if they take $400,000 and they spend it towards something else, towards instruction or something like that, that is...
Can't do that.
They can't do that, correct? Right? It has to be in maintenance. So it has to be towards facilities maintenance. I mean, that's what we can do. We said we wanted to use this for maintenance. Supervisor Tuck made the initial motion because he wanted it to be used specifically towards CHS. If the school board decides that they don't want to use it towards CHS, there's nothing we can do. We can either not give them the money, or we can give them the money and they can decide how to spend it. That's the situation, at least as I see it.
And that is the truth. We can not give it to anybody and put it back in the contingency if we want to.
Well, I'm going to go back to original statement that I made a long time ago, and that was that we are unable at this point in time to take on any more additional debt. And I think I made the statement that when we saw the list of maintenance projects, both on the county and the school side, that what we need to do is maintain the taxpayer investments that have been made. I mean, we can sit here and say, well, no, we're not going to give them $400,000, but we have $400,000 that we can give to them for maintenance. And it says here, maintenance projects from the two reports will be prioritized by staff from Montgomery County Public Schools, and the identified projects will be completed using the available $400,000. They're going to need to decide, based on their list, they're going to have to make a priority decision. And I agree with Mr. Gabriel, that is their decision to make. And we can either allow the one-time money to go over there so that they can make a decision with it, or we can sit here and not do it. But I'm going to tell you, I personally support doing it because we need to maintain the investment of our taxpayer money. When I first got on this board, we had roofs falling in the schools, because we weren't making an investment to maintain the taxpayer investment that had already been made. So I'm supportive of sending this over and why can't, and after they do their list or whatever, I'm sure it's going to come back what they're doing, because we like to have a dialogue with them. But that's just my personal opinion.
Can I add just one minor thing, and then I'll let Ms. Perkins speak, is that, if people do want to, and I'll say this to anybody who's watching on the video as well, is that the school board, I believe, is having a work session on the 28th. This Thursday, in which they are going to sit down and they are going to prioritize capital projects and maintenance projects and things like that. So, and that will be an open meeting, so anybody here or anybody who's watching can go and talk to the school board members about what they want to see done. And I hope indeed that people from CHS and from BHS and from all the schools go there and talk about the needs as they see them. So,
Ms. Perkins?
I was just saying, this is a list from just one school.
Right. Yes, ma'am. That's just CHS.
They have a list like this for every school.
Yes, ma'am.
And almost. So I assume that they will take all of those projects from all of the different schools and decide what their priorities are. And then we'll use the $400,000 for that, not just for CHS.
Well, and one of the things I will continue to point out and disagree with Mr. Gabriel a little bit on is I don't think that there's going to be many parents from BHS who are going to be saying that they've got maintenance issues because they're going to have a brand new school. I don't think there's going to be as many. Maybe there is going to be some folks from down at Charlottesville, but it's a fairly new school down there. I don't think there'll be many people coming from maintenance issues in regards to Reiner. They're going to have a new high school. There will be only one high school that will be old. There will be only one high school that will only have one gym. There will only be one high school that has holes in their seats. There will only be one high school that has a sign up in their stage that says you can't adjust the light bar due to safety issues. There will only be one high school with those issues. Every single kid to the Christiansburg Strand will be going through that high school. Every single one of those kids, when they go to compete at Charlottesville or at Albany or at Blacksburg, are going to be able to see a wonderful, nice school. And they're going to look at their school and say, it's not been maintained. Now, maybe that is an issue completely and totally for the school board. But since we know that we cannot borrow any more money for years to come to be able to address the needs at CHS, part of what I set this and moved this forward was to address some of those issues. So some of those kids, as I said that before, they will believe that they are not, hey, listen, we may not be able to keep up with the Joneses, but at least we live in the same neighborhood. At least we have a softball field for our girls to play on when every other school has a softball field for their girls to play on. But we're going to bus some kids across town, and they're going to have a similar facility that'll be nice. No, it won't have a grass infield, it'll be a dirt infield, or excuse me, it'll have a grass infield instead of a dirt infield. Those are bigger issues. I'm not a girls softball person, but I understand that those are real issues. And so when we start saying, okay, we're going to utilize this money, it's there. If they don't want to make the repairs to Christiansburg High School, that is their decision. If they don't want to ask for that money, they do not have to come back before this board and ask for that money for the Christiansburg High School strand. That's their call. It's our call to set the money aside. If they don't think it's that important, if they don't want to address it, they don't have to ask for it.
The one thing I'll just add is I agree with Mr. Tuck in that I hope that during this budget session, this place is flooded with CHS parents and students asking for more resources for the school. That is a wish that I really hope to see fulfilled.
Ms. Big?
Well, I was just going to say, we're focusing in on Christiansburg High School, which I agree with Chris, has needs. But how many of us have really been in all the schools? There are a lot of schools that have needs. There are a lot of schools that have safety concerns. Newer schools are better, safety-wise, that kind of thing. And, you can go from school to school and see different sound systems, for instance. I know that's true in elementary school. So, we're sort of focused on one school because we know about that school, because the issue's been brought forward by Mr. Tuck and some very, very good parent volunteers. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, sort of need to see the whole picture, and that's what their job is over on that board, is to see the whole picture and to see what their needs are and to put them in some kind of priority order.
Mr. Brown?
Supervisor Gabriel and Supervisor Tuck, you both have made some wonderful points and things like that. But again, the school board are elected. They have representatives from each district. They're closer to their maintenance issues or the needs than we will ever be. I mean, they have one issue to manage, I guess, the school system in Montgomery County, where we as a board, we have a number of issues to deal with. And I'm not an expert on maintenance or whatever, but I would think the people who dealt with it on a daily basis, so to speak, are closer to the problem or the needs than we are as a board. And I think the school board would be in the most appropriate position to say where the needs, where they have needs that needs to be addressed. I think that they're elected to manage the schools, and we're elected to allocate the money. And so I think we have to be, or I have to be careful and not to, what you say, micromanage the school system or tell the school board where their needs are versus them telling us where their needs are. And I can understand the Christiansburg strand or CHS, the other three strands, when the buildings are complete, they're going to have fairly new facilities. And it will probably be, once we get some of the debt paid off, that maybe we can address those concerns in probably, if it's 7, 8, 9 years. So what's going to happen is, in 7, 8 years, they're going to have a nice new facility, and the other facilities are going to be 7, 8, 9 years old. And so, well, we got a nice school, but patience is the name of the game that I see. I wish it was possible. I wish it was very possible, and we had the income to build 4 new high schools all at the same time. Buy additional property to do this, to make our schools the state-of-the-art things. But we don't have that luxury. And so getting back to this money, I sort of support what Supervisor Gabriel was talking about and Supervisor Biggs, and letting the school board make the decision on how to spend.
One real quick little thing that I'm going to say, and I'm going to shut up and then say nothing about it one way or the other. But the people I have talked to, and that has been not a whole lot of people, probably 5 to 10 folks from Christiansburg, the strand of schools. And these people, here's what they tell me when I ask them anything, or they just come up and tell me without me asking. These people say there is no reason for us to go to the meetings of the Board of Supervisors or the Montgomery County PTA people or school board, because there's 4 people there from Blacksburg schools, and we got 3 on both boards, and it doesn't matter what we say or do, they are not going to do anything other than what falls in behind Blacksburg. Now that's what they'll tell you. If you go out and meet some of them, I'll assure you that's exactly what they'll tell you, because that's the ones to the man. That's their message to me, and you know, I'll shut up with that.
Well, I think Auburn.
Good.
Can I say something? Yeah. I think Auburn disproved that by the way that we're dealing with the schools in Auburn, and I can understand why maybe people feel that way. I think most of the time from this board, and I don't know about the school board, but I've gone to a lot of them until this year, I get the feeling that the school board and the Board of Supervisors are not necessarily, and for the most part, are not location specific. They look at the needs of the students all over the county, and I think you can find that out. Perhaps because the school in Blacksburg fell in and was needed to be replaced, I think that you may get that feeling, but as far as I'm concerned, and I think as far as the people on the school board that I know, they look at the entire county and try to determine what's needed. Now, I think where we are now is that we're just in the midst of kind of a loggerhead. We sent this over there. Members of the school board felt that we were trying to micromanage what they were doing, and that's a very difficult thing. And it's been one of those issues where we have long-time concerns. And I also think in the Elliston-Shawsville area, we have certainly disproved what you said, simply because there's a new school in Elliston, there's a new high school in Elliston and Shawsville. We've given much money to many of those projects. So in the Shawsville-Elliston area and in the Roanoke area, I think we have been as fair as we could possibly be in giving and addressing the needs when those people come to this board. And what I have watched in the past on the school board, I've watched them try to address problems that occur in schools all over the county. So the thing that I guess we have to decide, really, if you get down to brass tacks, is if they're going to have a meeting on the 28th, they're going to take all the school's priorities. You can see by the letter that was written, and Matt's the one who goes to their meetings, but you can see by the letter that Ms. Blackburn wrote, she still does, the board does not want us to tell them what their priorities are. And so they talked about, I think, Mr. Meadows, you shared with us those reports, did you not?
I did.
That she's mentioning in there.
I'm passing those on to you right now again.
There are a number of needs. So we paid a great deal of money for some of those reports. I agree with you, Chris. There are really things that need to be done at Christiansburg High School, and I think we've said that all along. And I think that we can't, but we just can't tell them what they've got to have as a priority. Now, we don't have to give the money, we don't have to do anything. I mean, this came out of the goodness of our hearts and recognition of the needs, but that's as far as it can go. And when they come out with a priority list of looking at all their schools, I can tell you some of the new schools have priorities too. Maybe Christiansburg Middle School. There are a lot of things. So, I just don't know how we got into this quagmire, because that's what it is, of who's in charge. And that's what I feel. I'm sorry, but it's that whole question of, we give the money to the schools. The schools use it for what they think. That's why they're elected. That's why they're there. It's 7 of them. But I do believe that it's not micromanaging to have those schools give us a listing of what they've spent their, what they've spent their money on. So that is about as far as we can go, really.
Anybody else?
I was going to say something after Bill if he was going to say.
No, go ahead. And just
Well, I
drag it
just
out.
want to make a statement as being like the longest serving board member. And my statement would be, and it sort of reflects what Ms. Perkins was saying, I have always felt very proud of our board and in relation to what we've done for all over the county. And when you look at what's happened in even the last 18 years, where we've built new facilities in eastern Montgomery County, including a high school, including an elementary school, including a fire department. When you look at what we've done in Reiner, including the Auburn Elementary School, including the fire department. When you look at what we were finally able to accomplish by building the 2 middle schools in Blacksburg and Christiansburg, you know, those things didn't happen because we sat up here and said, okay, for Blacksburg people, what do you want to do? It happened because we're elected to serve the citizens of Montgomery County. We come from a district, but we see the whole picture, at least I hope we do. And I agree with Ms. Perkins because as someone that attended school board members regularly, I attended those meetings probably just 33 years before Matt took over. The people that serve on that board care about the children of the county. So I don't understand this thing, but perception is reality. So if Mr. Creed is saying that this is what people are saying, then maybe the thing we need to do, besides publicly stating it here, is when we go out to our community meetings, you need to make it clear. And we need to say, look at the history here. And this whole board has supported things that have affected and impacted citizens, I hope in a good way, all over the county of Montgomery County. And so when you get into these little, it's my territory, this territory thing, what happens is you're splitting up people and you're splitting up things. And it's really a sad situation because that's what we have in Washington. That's what we have in Richmond. This is probably the only place that people can come together and try to serve the interest of citizens from the whole county. So I'm sorry if people feel that way, and I'd be more than willing to talk to those people. Sit down face to face and talk to them because maybe they don't know the history. Maybe they don't understand that these 4 Blacksburg people that I keep getting thrown in my face, that these people have cared about the whole county. I mean, I really feel passionate about that, and it sort of irritates me that that would be thrown in my face as a Blacksburg supervisor, because I've worked my off to do what's best for the whole county the whole time I've served on this board. And that's all I have to say.
Right, a quick point. Mary, I think it depends on who you talk to out there. I mean, just like, I don't know how many people I've talked to about the courthouse, for an example, and you go to one of these little country stores and 4 or 5 people, it's a waste of money. What was wrong with the old courthouse? Why can't you build one fire department for the county? You know, just one fire department. Then you tell them about the rolling stock, how to get it there and so forth. And then it says, well, they ought to go out there somewhere around Corning and build one high school for the county, and then we call it argument to side. And then you start telling them about the transportation costs and the number of buses, and it's just not feasible. So it depends. Now, I've heard the Blacksburg group, but the latest I've heard was the board and the school board listen to more of the Roanoke people than the Blacksburg people than any other people. Like the Roanoke people and the Blacksburg people are tied in together now. That's the latest that I've heard. And I think regardless, and we have what, I forgot how many people have, like 93,000 people or somewhere like this. 94,000. And you can go in different little segments, different little pockets of this county, and the message is going to be different. Just like there are so many people that I will see, they believe that the public schools is sucking this county dry. But I mean, it's like, oh, they just waste this, and they criticize the teachers, criticize this and that, and some of these people, you know, are 75 years old. When they remember their days in school, it was a potbelly scoops, you know, potbelly stove and no air conditioning and 2-room school and things like this. And sometimes you can, how you explain things and so forth. And you sit on this board, you guys have sat here. I mean, when I go on the board, I got to see where Carl and Craig is hiding all the county money since we have so much. But once you get here, you find the money's not there. And so I think that some of the people we talk to are going to understand, and there's going to be a majority of the people out there that will never understand. And you don't really fully understand until you get into the nuts and bolts of setting up on this board, understanding the function of the government, how it works, how the revenues come in and go out and so forth. You can tell them about this and tell them about that. It's the same thing. People understand the 12 cents tax rate. They say, well, I guess you're going to hit us up for another 12 cents. Like it's going to be you have to add 12 cents every year to pay the debt. Not this, like it's this there. And some of these people are college educated people that they don't understand the function of government. So it depends on who you listen to at the time that you listen to them and what's on their mind.
And that's why it's important for us to be out there at the community meeting so people can come and we can try to help them understand if they're having. I mean, do they know that the judge could have told us to build that? He could have ordered us to build the courthouse and it could have ended up costing a heck of a lot more money than it did. But because we had that extended period of negotiation back and forth and changing of architects and everything else, we were able actually to save money. But yes, the judge could have just said, and it's happened across this state, you're going to do this, you're going to do it my way, and you're going to pay for it. And we would have had to have done it.
You know what people say? The judge has just got too much power.
Well, it's called the state of Virginia.
That's the Commonwealth.
And it's like, people yell at me, says, y'all, I don't care what the judge said, y'all should have just not built it. You know, I'm saying, yeah, right.
Be in jail.
Mr. Todd.
Jim, and I appreciate my fellow supervisors' comments in regards to, and I believe it's just like when you and I went, neither Fallen Branch kids, I don't think none of them go to my, maybe a few of them go in my district. A few of them, you were there for the Christiansburg Town Council meeting, and I understand that we look at it as a whole. That's what I thought we were doing when we set aside that $400,000. I thought we were saying, hey, listen, we're going to do a little Band-Aid on CHS. We're going to get it through a little bit. We're going to help it limp along for 5 or 6 more years. We're going to make sure that those kids that are going there know that they're not, are they getting a 63 by the time we talk about grading and all the facilities, $1 million school? No, that may come down and that may be something that 6, 8 years down the road, or we may remodel that and use that building. But whatever we're talking about that that really the 6, 7 year period of time before we can start looking at that. That's one-time money. Now, in that school board budget, how many times do we see one-time money requests coming back to us saying one-time money, one-time money, one-time money? This is one-time money set aside for CHS. Now, obviously, some of us may disagree, but that's still where I'm at. This is a Band-Aid to get us to that point. If they don't want to use it for CHS, they don't have to use it for CHS. Right. But you know what we could do? If they don't want to use it for CHS, we do have a juvenile detention center that's going to need some major renovations. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what we could look at taking care of the money. If they don't believe that that's a priority, if they don't believe it's a Band-Aid to help the community understand that we're all in this together and that little Band-Aid going through, then that's their call.
Jim, I understand, and I understand what you're saying, because as we consider the whole county, I'm always reminded of the woman who had 7 children, and they said, "Mom, which one do you love the most?" And she said, "The one that needs me the most." And I think that what we did when we did the $400,000 is we thought and we made some comments about maybe that wasn't the right way to go, but we understood that maybe Christiansburg really needed those things, that you presented a good case and so did other people. But that was not the way it was received by the school board, is my understanding. And so I think that now we are at the situation where since we said it was for maintenance, that they're going to use it for maintenance, but the way that they think whichever one of those children need it the most. So I really don't know, but I think everything you say has merit. I really do. But it's not I just can't tell them what I consider the child that needs it the most.
May I speak now? I've heard this, we've talked about it for several weeks. I have, half of my district is in Christiansburg, most of Christiansburg schools. I was really pleased when Mr. Tuck brought up the recommendation to put some money into capital improvement for Christiansburg schools. And I agree with Mr. Gabriel, where if we're going to give them the money, we can't dictate except for towards maintenance, and we know that as a board, okay? The schools need maintenance. The buildings, as a couple of board members said, are our assets and they need to be maintained. There might be a more critical small maintenance problem in another school than Christiansburg High School, but personally I'd like to see the money go to Christiansburg. I can't dictate it, all right? I will support this $400,000 going to schools just because this is the maintenance that they don't get from us on an annual basis. It's kind of a kick, it's a gift, as I've always said. And like I said, I would hope they would spend the majority of it on Christiansburg High School. And if they don't, maybe we don't need to give them gifts anymore, if that's, the way we gotta look at it. But again, I'll support it. And we'll go from there. So.
Can I make a motion we go out of work session?
Pardon?
Make a motion we go out of work session.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Chair Paulides?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay. The next item is attorney's report.
No reports.
County administrator's report.
Just a couple of quick items, Mr. Chairman. Did want to remind everyone again, with the meeting schedule that we have for March, that tomorrow's meeting that we had tentatively had scheduled is postponed to a later date. I will be sending out an email tomorrow asking you to look at the 13th, the 19th, or the 20th. We are working diligently to try to get the best information we can to present to you to discuss health insurance. That is, as Carol mentioned earlier, that is a significant challenge for us in our budget this year, and we need to spend some time talking about it. So I will email you tomorrow and ask you your preference on the 13th, the 19th, or the 20th. Of March. Yes, ma'am.
The 20th is when the library is having the reception for our board at the, I can't remember what time, I think it's 7 o'clock or something. Remember the reception is March 20th.
Okay. All right, so we can't go past 7 that day if we do anything. Okay.
Well, on the 18th, we have a community meeting, then
We
the
do.
19th is one of these.
We do, and that's what I was going to go over next. We have, just to review briefly with the board, next Monday we have the budget presentation at 5:30, PSA meeting at 7. Then the 11th is our regular Board of Supervisors meeting, and we can have budget work session as a part of that meeting if we need to. The 12th is the Community Conversations meeting at the Reiner Fire Department at 7 o'clock. That's Tuesday the 12th, and I believe you have a handout at your place for the 2 community meetings. We had initially on the calendar had a meeting for the 14th, to discuss insurance. That is not going to work for the consultant. So the calendar we sent out on Friday that noted the 14th as a potential meeting date, that is not going to be. So that one can come off. Then we have a meeting on the 18th at Price's Fork Elementary School, another community conversations meeting, regular Board of Supervisors meeting on March 25th, and the budget public hearing on the 26th. So once we determine between the 13th, 19th, or 20th, that meeting will be to hopefully nail down where we are with our insurance.
I got the 20th on my calendar. There's a reception for the board members and everything at the Blacksburg Library.
That's at 5:30, at 7 o'clock.
That's at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, and if we were to do, and I made a note of that, so that may be the lesser of the 3 dates we consider, but if we were to do the 20th, we may do it at 5:30 at the Blacksburg Library, and then we could just adjourn into the reception, but
And the reception's at 7?
7 o'clock, yes ma'am. And following up on the meeting for this week, we have a meeting this Thursday night at 6 o'clock with Roanoke County in Roanoke. And for those of you that can attend, if you want to ride, I would ask that we meet here at my office at 5 o'clock, and I can take at least 4. I don't know. Has everybody responded as to whether or not they're going to be able to attend Thursday night?
I'm going.
You're going?
That's just, what's the date?
The 28th, this Thursday.
I usually
Roanoke County.
Roanoke County.
have PDC that night.
Okay.
I have my open house.
What?
My open house.
Yeah.
I unfortunately can't make it.
Yeah, you had a
We're
prior.
at school.
I think I'll be able to make it.
Okay. Well, that, and I will say,
What time are you planning on meeting, sir?
well, if we can meet at my office at 5, we'll leave 5:05, 5:10. It's at the Green Ridge Recreation Center at 6 o'clock.
I'll try to give you a call.
Okay. And I'll email the invitation out again. And again, that was set by Roanoke County for several of the jurisdictions.
You gonna leave here when?
Probably 5 or 10 after 5. We have to be there by 6. And it's right off Interstate 581 there as you come into Roanoke. And Mr. Chairman, the last thing I want to mention is an award that we received. I was very proud of. At the Winter Managers Conference week before last up in Stanton, the Virginia Institute of Government has what's called the Email Broadcast Information System Service. Basically what that is the Institute sends out emails to jurisdictions all across Virginia on various topics. It's similar to a listserv for local governments throughout Virginia. And we participate in that service, and we respond when we get requests. And Judy Kaiser in our office is the primary one that helps coordinate that. But it goes to it's a number of localities in Virginia. And at the conference week before last, we received their award for being the #1 respondent in the state, Commonwealth of Virginia, to the service. And that's a real testimony to Judy and a testimony to the department heads who participate in this, because one of the nice things about it is when an issue comes up in another jurisdiction and it's emailed out, many times we don't have an answer to it, but I'll respond and say, hey, I'd like to have more information on that as well. And so whatever this group gathers, we get the benefit of the knowledge. But this is something we'll add to our wall of distinction out there, if you will, and it speaks very highly of our department heads for their willingness to help other jurisdictions across the Commonwealth. And
All right.
that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Biggs.
I just want to make sure somebody's going to take care of the Shawsville Rescue Squad, or do you want me to do it?
Well, you can do it.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing.
Well, I don't want to take away anyone's fire, so to speak. But the other thing is, someone's going to take care of the schools. That'd be Matt. Okay, so I don't have to take care of anything, but I'm very supportive of both. I support the whole county. Just want to make that clear. Okay, I want to thank the board members and Craig that came to the Strong Men and Women event that we had yesterday at the Christiansburg Library for Nanny Hairston. And this was the original program that sort of came from it. And it's just so cool because you see the state of Virginia map, and you have these 8 outstanding individuals, and the Southwest Virginia individual is Nanny Hairston from Christiansburg. And it was a really well-attended event yesterday, and she greatly appreciated the resolution that our board passed for her. And it's just one of those really positive things that when they happen, you feel so good about, because here's a person in our community that devoted so much of her time and her husband's time into making our community a better place. So just wanted to thank the people that came yesterday. That's all.
Okay. Supervisor Tuck.
Well, it was bound to happen, and one time it finally did. I missed last month's planning commission. I made a mistake, didn't call Ms. Biggs because I just missed it, and I wanted to apologize to my fellow board members. I know that you're counting on me being there. I did talk with Steve afterwards, and I realized I missed it. I was thinking it was going to be the following week, despite the fact that Bree had sent me a nice email and put something in my Dropbox. So I'm messed up, and but other than that, I don't have any other reports.
Okay. Supervisor Gabriel.
Just a quick thing about the school board meeting last week is that I encourage the board members to maybe watch the video, which is of course online on YouTube nowadays. Mr. Tuck had a couple of questions that he had asked of Ms. Blackburn when she presented the budget, and those were discussed, as well as the Falling Branch situation with the park and ride. That was discussed at great length. So if you have any questions about that, you might want to take a look at that. I'd also like to just make a motion that we allocate the $400,000 that we had set aside for maintenance for all of the county schools.
Second.
That what, Matt? I'm sorry, Matt. For all county schools.
Yes.
And per the request by the school board.
And I would just like to add to that going back to the contingency versus reserve discussion we had earlier, that money is not in contingency. It was actually reserved by the board previously. So
That's from the windfall, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
It's not any additional anything.
Right.
It's one-time money. Yes, ma'am.
I'd kind of like to make an amendment to that. Just put for the Montgomery County School Board rather than all county schools.
Sorry, I don't understand what you're
Instead of making the statement for all county schools, we're giving it to the Montgomery County School Board.
Sure. Can I reword it? Can I reword my motion?
Okay. Yeah.
Is that we make a motion to allocate the $400,000 we had previously set aside for maintenance for the school board to decide as they best see fit to benefit all the county schools.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further conversation? Roll call, please.
Mr. Tuck?
No.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
No.
Is that a yeah? Did you?
No.
No. Ms. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Willis?
Aye.
5 ayes, 2 no.
And that's all I have.
Okay. And Supervisor Creed.
Yeah, the only thing I had was a rescue squad, but I'm just gonna let that pass over to Mr. Brown by being on the
Commission,
rescue commission, make that motion when
I
it gets
think
to him.
both you and the district, and I'm the liaison to the commission, as long as they get the money.
That's right.
You know.
Okay.
I will pass it on.
Ms. Perkins.
Okay, I just want to say again how important it is that citizens come to our conversation meetings. I think this is a great opportunity for us to hear from the people in the communities. And I know that March is going to be just one long month of meetings, but that's important. That's why we're here and that's what we're doing.
I thought we only had 2 meetings a month.
What?
I thought we only had 2 meetings a month.
They figured you two in March, it's 2 meetings a week, I'm sorry.
Well, don't we get rid of 1 meeting in December and 1 meeting in July, so maybe it averages out.
Averages out,
I don't know. I did attend the meeting of the Social Services Board this morning, and again, they had some leftover one-time monies, and they're trying to do some things in that building to make it a more efficient place to receive clients and to meet their needs. I took my iPad with me thinking they had Wi-Fi, but they don't. So I said, well, maybe I'll mention that at the board meeting tonight. And I think they are due for some sort of upgrade in their communication system anyway, and telephone system. So it would be really helpful and save even more money if somehow or other they could have some Wi-Fi there that I would be able to hook into, and I would say the whole board could if they so chose to do so. So let it be known and let the minutes show that I did bring that, and they can ask me to. It's just that when I got there, and really what precipitated it was that my computer is still all, my printer is all torn. It is stopped up, and I can't figure out how to get it apart. So I'm going to ask somebody who knows how to get it apart to get the paper from jamming it. But at any rate, it is a need.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think it would be well looking into.
Duly noted. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Brown.
First thing I want to thank Mary for doing an outstanding job in presenting the resolution to Nan Harrison, and you just super good job, even in recognizing the board members and so forth. Second thing, I'd like to make a motion that we, and I'm looking at this bill, I can't see whether it's $9,181.98 or 9,000, whichever one it is, that we, pay that bill from our contingency money to help out the Shawsville.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you want to make a motion to appropriate not to exceed $9,300, but whatever the exact figure is, that way.
That would be fine, and you'd have enough money to cover, not to exceed $9,300.
And I would second that motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gaylor?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Chair Palettis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay, I guess I'm next, and I also attended the thing yesterday with Ms. Hairston, and I was really moved at the accomplishments of this young lady at 91.
She's a sharp lady.
And she gave a very inspiring speech that day, and just, it's amazing how far we've come. So, and she was a big part of it here in Montgomery County. And also, I don't know, I don't have much else on my plate, I don't think. Do I? Am I missing anything?
You might want to mention the meetings we had on the park and ride lot.
Oh yeah, Mr. Tuck and I went to the Christiansburg meeting a week ago last Friday on the park and ride lot, and they were very well represented by the Falling Branch School, by the police department, by their board, and we had not only officials from the school but also people in the PTA, and the VDOT officials there. And it's a thing that is going to, I feel, be two parts. One is going to have to be a quick solution, and the second one will be a permanent solution. And the quick solution, it sounds like they're already starting on. We had a meeting with the town
And VDOT,
and VDOT, what, last week?
last Friday.
Last Friday.
Thursday, sorry.
And
just Thursday.
most of that was conveyed through that meeting, and we're going to set up a, I want to call it a task force, to
It's a working group.
to try to prioritize things and see what direction we go. So, but it's another one of those emergency type situations. And
Everybody's been very responsive.
yeah,
though.
it's been very positive. So, but that being said, I call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.